Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field report. Had a great week fishing in Canada. It was a nice break. The weather was cool, a bit on the wet side, but the fishing was great, and the Canadian hospitality is always nice. Great to be back in the fields. This last week we worked on our side dress plots. Man, the corn really jumped in 1 week's time. Last week's weather got kind of crazy in some spots, high winds and hail. Most of the corn that was laid down, but not broken off by the wind, it'll have plenty of time to stand itself back up before pollination. The hail in some spots, I'm afraid it's going to require some replanting, especially if you don't have or aren't carrying hail insurance. The wheat crop will be coming out this week. Most fields look like they got good potential. With wheat harvest ahead of schedule, in most areas it bodes well on our double crop beans. My suggestion is to no-till these beans to salvage soil moisture. The temperatures this week will dry out things very quickly if we go in there and work it. The early planted corn is 3 to 5 leaves from tassel, meaning that we'll see some of it pollinating ahead of the 4th of July. The later planted corn is kind of now in the middle of the ugly corn stage, showing a lot of different things. The corn on corn and the corn in large covers showing the carbon penalty effect if you didn't manage the carbon penalty correctly. Now, this corn is yellow or shades of yellow, mainly showing nitrogen and sulfur deficiencies. The later planted soybeans are caught in the carbon penalty as well. Beans need to be in that V3, actually V4, before the nodules will start producing nitrogen. These beans that were planted earlier are already at V6 and they're just cranking right on, but those that are in that V2, V3 stage are locked up. They're kind of a little bit of a catch-22. They need to grow to get to V4 to produce the nitrogen, but they're locked up because of lack of nitrogen available in the soil. And then if we're spraying contact herbicides on them as well, we tend to put the pause on growth as well. Some of these fields will be locked up for 3 weeks before they start to jump in growth, while the older fields next to them, of course, will be just powering on. The good news is beans going through the carbon penalty doesn't seem to affect the yield much. So much of their yield is made later in the growing season. Some guys are asking, the beans seem to be stalled. Should we wait to apply our herbicide? The answer here would be no. Apply your herbicide based on weed height. Don't worry about the bean. As the corn crop transitions from the seed roots and the seed starches to the true roots, we're seeing some ununiform stands becoming out there, somewhat uneven in growth. As we scout these corn stands, look closely at these smaller plants and count the number of leaf collars showing. If the collar counts are the same, but the plant is smaller, that means that they are the same age, they germinated and came up at the same time, but there's something affecting their growth. If they're not the same collar, now you have an emergency problem, so you're going to check for seed depth, burrow conditions. This could also translate to seed quality in those early planted cornfields. But if the plants have the same number of collared leaves, again, that is your indicator that while they may have came up together, there is a stress that is holding the plant back, not getting the same amount of growth per GDU as a neighboring plant. Here's where we'll see the sins of spring. As corn plant makes that transition from seed roots to the true roots, anything that affects the growth of the true crown roots will show up in growth. Wheel track compaction, sidewall smearing, herbicide carryover, fertility issues, you name it. As the affected plants stall out, the neighboring plants are in rapid growth mode, meaning that differences will become more pronounced between the plants. It's important for the pest team to do stand evaluations now while you have evidence there present to look at to tell you what happened. emergence-related issues are dealt with differently than ununiform growth issues. We are seeing some herbicide carryover issues. Most are related to the overlap zones so far. The sin of compaction is now showing itself, and it will continue to do so with these high temperatures this week. We are dealing with some rootless corn issues, where we have knee-high corn getting floppy and wanting to lean or tip over. Most of this is related to sidewall smearing, caused by planting in too wet and or too much downforce on the row unit, or erosion down the row, especially in strip till on slopes. These plants have developed the first 3 sets of roots that went straight down and out due to sidewall smearing. They're struggling to get the 4th and 5th set of crown roots developed to anchor the plant. Now, these plants are in a rapid growth stage, powered by the first 3 sets of roots. The problem is they're producing too big of a plant without those anchor roots to hold them up. With this week's forecast, any fields that had sidewall smearing at planting, if they're not already, will start to crack open this week. A couple of things you can do in this situation. Try not to apply a growth regulator to them like 2,4-D or dicamba if you can help it. But the main fix is to roll soil around the base of the plant. Now, this will usually take 2 passes with a row crop cultivator, 1 shallow pass to create some loose soil, and then a second pass slightly deeper with the shields up and faster speed to roll the soil to the base of the plant to cover up the slot and stimulate brace roots to fire off. Now, timing is crucial here. You'll need to get this done before the plants get so big that they start falling over. Might ask a neighbor who grows organic crops to get some pointers on this. They do it all the time for weed control in the row. In some fields, the problem is soil type related due to soil moisture at planting. So again, you may have to drive every pass of the field, setting that cultivator down when you need to and picking it up when you don't need it. For the younger ones out there, we're talking about a row crop cultivator, not a field cultivator. On the insect front, rootworm feeding is starting to take place. Pest teams start looking for rootworm feeding in your non-traded corn. I would probably wait another week or so before starting to do floats to monitor your pressure and your resistance issues. We'll probably start to see some second generation moth movement next week. Let's get the pheromone traps out near those untraded cornfields. I have heard of tar spot sightings in the wetter areas. I have not seen it yet in our plots. If you see potential tar spot lesion on those lower leaves, give them a good rubbing and see if that tar spot or that spot comes off. If it doesn't come off, it's probably tar spot. Early infections will need to be more aggressive with our treatment plan. This week's hot temperatures and wind will roll up corn quite a bit. When the corn rolls up, it's protecting itself, which is a good thing, not letting that plant overheat. As long as the plant is growing at night, rolling is more stress on the farmer than it is on the corn. But if this rolling continues for a few weeks, it can pull the ear size down on our L1 hybrids. As the side dress season is slowing down, the nitrate test did indicate we lost some nitrogen in the wetter areas. Fall applied N and all spring N showed the most loss. We could tell the higher rain amount areas by the nitrate levels as they came in. I know nitrate testing is a hard chore, but it's well worth it in years like this, where yield potential is very strong. These stands are some of the best we've seen, bringing a lot of potential with them. Growers were able to identify the great stands to bump yield goals and match up the rates with new yield goals, or N rates, and account for the missing N. I'm still pumped about this crop. Many early flowering beans, many great corn stands. The foundation of this crop looks strong, and you need a strong foundation to grow a strong crop. I know some areas have been kicked around hard this spring, and it may lead you to think that this market should respond to what is happening in your backyard. My advice is not to do your marketing by looking out the front window of your house. Take a road trip or talk to others scattered across the Midwest. One of my bigger concerns this year is the amount of water hemp that is blowing through everything that we're throwing at it. I think this year we're going to have pressure like the growers in Tennessee have been dealing with for some time. When water hemp in the corn is so thick it's messing with your wide drop application, you have pressure that most likely won't be controlled. Soil testing crews are driving hard to stay ahead of this fast-growing soybean crop. Our agronomists are working through all the fields signed up on the high-resolution program. If you haven't been contacted yet, it should happen here pretty soon. They're also contacting growers who signed up for the virtual farm visit to identify those deep sites. So if you're interested in a virtual farm visit but haven't called them in yet, let's get that done. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.